Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Turin here with another Warhammer Total War online commentary. This particular battle, I'll be playing the Beastmen, and I'm going to be facing off against the Greenskins, so definitely a good time for all. So as far as my army composition goes, I have a front line of Goreherds with shields. Now, against the Greenskins, I feel like you can get away with using like Ungors in the front line and other troops like that, but the downside is that with the Beastmen, I feel that your real strength lies in your Minotaurs and your Gorbles and your mobility, obviously. So Centigores with great weapons and those type of things. So I like having a front line that, obviously, they don't need to do all the work in regards to putting down enemy troops, but I do like them to be able to hold for a little while your, other more mobile and hard-hitting units can really kind of get around, take out those key targets and things like that. So I decided to opt for, I guess a quote-unquote more elite front line of Goreherds with shields rather than Ungors. Now, I don't think the shields are the biggest deal against the Greenskins because typically Goblin Archers aren't terribly popular in this build or against the Beastmen from what I've seen. And granted, that's completely anecdotal, but these guys actually have slightly higher melee defense. They have 32 against the, let's see what that is, the 26 of the Ungor Spearherds. So, and these guys are actually buffed back here, it looks like. But still, they're pretty decent units, and I think they make a pretty good front line. So just a safe and relatively conservative pick there. I also did bring a Beast Lord. I was just cutting some corners, and the Beast Lord himself also does have this, which is pretty nice, the Horn of the First Beast. So Kazrak doesn't have this. He has the Scourge augmentation, but I really like the Horn of the First Beast. It allows your troops to get a 12% charge bonus, 12 melee attack, 18% weapon damage, and it also makes them immune to psychology. So if you're playing against Manticores or other factions, especially like the Empire coming in with those big Imperial Griffins, it's a pretty good ability to have, and it can be very helpful if you use it in a timely manner. So I also have some Minotaurs with shields back here. Again, I'm not sure. I probably should have just gotten the Great Weapon variant, but, again, I always go with the shields just to really play it safe. Because, again, if they have, like, the Rusty Errors and some Goblin Archers gunning these guys down, they are very weak against Focus Fire, so I just went with a bit more of a steady pick. Though against the Greenskins matchup, I don't mind getting the Great Weapons, because they can be pretty decent against, the Orc Warboy Biggin groups if you kind of want to run them with your Cav. I feel like it's not a bad idea, but the shields are a bit of a safer pick, in my opinion. I also have two Gorbles, of course. I have a Bray Shaman with the Lore of Death. Not Lore of Death, excuse me, the Lore of the Wild. So he has Transformation of Kadan. He also has the Flock of Doom. So essentially what you want to do is just kind of, as you guys can see in this particular battle, I've kind of already got my forces over here, and I'm just trying to bait my opponent out here with all his Orc Warboy Biggins. And once there's that really congested tight pack fighting, I can't. The Flock of Doom is just so darn strong. It's there's few abilities that can really wreak as much havoc as it for how much? I think, what is it? 9 wins of magic to cast, and I'm not sure actually. Is it less than that? I think with the overcast it costs 9. I'm not sure, but in the back line I have 2 Ungor Spearman Herds. So these guys are kind of just to deal with periphery threats. So obviously the Beastmen, you typically have mobility, you have a lot of kind of fast units, so you don't have to worry too much about being flanked. But in case you kind of had a really overwhelming group with a lot of Cav, I wanted to have some cheap units that I could kind of just throw out to defend my flanks. So I have 2 groups of the Ungor Spearman Herds. In worst case, I just throw them into the front line. They do have charge defense, and they also have a nice little anti-large bonus. So if need be, they can do the job. So also 2 Centigores with great weapons. These guys are great. Armor piercing. They're extremely fast. Pretty powerful unit. I think they, 96 move speed right now. And if you look at that compared to the Orc Warboy Biggins, who are at 62, that's quite a massive difference. So I'm a big fan of these guys. Very mobile and can allow for some great plays. When I play the Beastmen, I always do this. I always bring a group of Chaos Poison Warhounds. So if you're able to like catch one of these groups out and get them out of position and poison them, these guys are also great fodder for breaking the charge, considering they only cost a few hundred gold themselves. But man, that poison is really, really big in those type battles. So as far as my opponent's army goes, he has some Savage Orcs, so this is probably the only variation from the traditional Greenskins build. These guys are pretty good against the Beastmen. They hit hard, they're very cheap, and Beastmen aren't, armored typically, so they do a pretty good job. So he also has some Biggins and some Black Orcs mixed in there, so pretty decent army here. He does have the Duresti Errors, which made me glad that I did bring shields on those Minotaurs. And then he also has the Orc War Boss and the Orc Shaman. He has a Goblin Big Boss. He has one over here as well, so very good idea to kind of send a Goblin Big Boss with your Cav contingency to have them, get that encouragement. So very well played there. And that's pretty much it, guys. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So you can see my Gorbles are trying to sneak by to the Cav engagement. They just barely get by those Savage Orcs. And thankfully, Gorbles themselves are really fast. It looks like right now when they're buffed, they do have 70 move speed, which is really, really huge. So I'm just trying to kind of force a 2-pronged battle, and you can see my opponent wisely splits his forces, which is pretty good. But granted, I do have a huge mobility advantage over here, so hopefully I'll be able to take advantage of that. So in the front line, the Goreherds are going to engage with Black Orcs, which is going to be a pretty terrible engagement for the Goreherds, which are just like not even close to them in regards to tier quality. But I do get the Beast Lord. I use a nice little Call of Violence to kind of try and get rid of any initial breaking the Crimson Killers might do. And actually with the Minotaurs in here, look at that charge they did. They absolutely decimated the Crimson Killers, so that was very, very good for me. Over here, we did get the engagement we wanted, and I just ran far back to kind of get away from these guys. And you can see that Flock of Doom is just tearing these guys to shreds. it's really brutal. And also I have the 2 Gorbals in here. I have the Poison Warhounds, and I figured if I could take out the Broken Tusk Mob and all of his mobile troops, then I would just have a massive advantage in this battle. And then even if I lose the infantry engagement, I can use my mobility and cycle charging to win it out. So that was kind of my game plan there. So once his big ends and you know, Savage Orcs get here to reinforce, I simply pull back and just taking advantage of the Beastmen's mobility and just trying to outmaneuver him here. So I do get the Orc Boarboy Biggins here down pretty low to 28 models, and the Broken Tusk Mob just got absolutely decimated. So now that these guys are isolated, I just get in here and get a nice little charge, and you can see them just getting squashed here. Savage Orcs definitely were not designed to take charges, especially from Gorbals and very heavy hitting units like that, and that single charge there just is already putting them in a shaken status, and it's really, really strong. And obviously this Gorgable can last like 45 minutes against all these guys. So the battle out here is going pretty well, and I will be using a Flock of Doom shortly. In the front line, though, it's going a little better for my opponent. The Greenskin infantry is very strong. These Black Orcs are able to rout off the Spearman herd, which I guess isn't surprising. And then I also did lose a group of Gorbals here, but I do have my Bray Shaman here fighting, as well as my Lord, the Beast Lord, fighting, and they're doing a pretty good job kind of whittling down these Black Orcs. And I did get a Spearman herd. I kind of ran them around the flank and was able to get in there and apply a little pressure to these Black Orcs. And even a rear attack like that is pretty nice for leadership regardless. Also on that same note, I was able to summon a Manticore, which is really, really useful in this matchup. And they were able to single-handedly chase off the Rusty Heirs, which is really big, because if the Rusty Heirs are focusing your Lord, and again, when I play Greenskins, I don't really care about friendly firing into my troops if it means I can get the enemy Lord. So again, it's definitely a very, very key target to get. So over here, the Black Orcs are starting to get whomped on a little bit by these Minotaurs and the supported Beastmen infantry. Also, the Goblin Big Boss and the Orc War Boss are in pretty good shape, so I still have to be aware of that. And he has this huge army of Greenskins coming. Thankfully, the Crimson Killers got taken out. They actually only have 7 models left, but those regiments of renown are pretty resilient. They're going to stay in the fight for quite some time. So things are going pretty well. You can see these guys coming over, but on that same note, I was able to get away. So essentially what had happened was we drew the fight over here. We were having this long, pronounced engagement, and I kept backing up and trying to lure these Biggins out, because I knew that the Orc Warboy Biggins cannot keep pace, especially when they're so beat up. So I simply pulled back, went all the way around. I got the 2 Gorbals away, I got my Centaurs away, and I was able to outmaneuver him there. So essentially what's going to happen now is these Biggins are just going to be out of the fight for probably almost the rest of the battle, considering how far away they are from the main engagement. And my Centaurs are going to be able to get a pretty good little rear charge here. So they're going to come in here trying to find that sweet spot, and right here would be pretty good. But granted, having them on Black Orcs isn't bad, because they do have that armor-piercing great weapon, but in sustained combat, the Black Orcs are just so sturdy. But right now I'm just trying to find kind of the juicy targets here, and he does isolate my Beast Lord with that Goblin Big Boss, but the Centaurs are able to come in and apply a little bit of pressure on him, so hopefully they'll be able to take him out. In the main engagement, though, the Beast Lord and the Bray Shaman are kind of getting in there, and you can see the Flock of Doom generating pretty good value against these Biggins and other troops here. But those Black Orcs are coming, and then also my opponent still has, a little bit of a contingent here, so I was a little stressed out about that. And then also he did have these Biggins, which is essentially a full health group, but I did see them coming, so instead of just eating that charge, I charged into these Black Orcs and tried to do as much damage as I could, because I knew these Centaurs were going to take a beating, and then I tried to countercharge in conjunction with that Feral Manticore coming in. And obviously these guys aren't immune to psychology, so that Manticore is going to probably terrify these guys, which is really, really nice. And the terrifying mechanic on the Manticore is quite good. So at the same time, I do get a Call of Violence, which does keep these guys steady, because their leadership was starting to tank pretty low, and they might have broken without that. It's hard to say, but the Black Orcs are definitely something I need to kind of work on and keep chipping away, so you can see the Manticore getting in there and applying some pretty good pressure. In the front line, we're continuing to fight. The Biggins are doing a really, really good job. Biggins are obviously designed to take out kind of cheapo infantry like this, and they hit like trucks, but thankfully that Flock of Doom is so good. And if you can kind of force the battle in the end game as Beastmen into a Death Star and just get everyone kind of high and tight, then that Flock of Doom is going to be absolutely devastating. Typically with my formations, I like to go, and this is something I need to improve on, I like to go in a very tight formation and kind of, circle out from there, but I found that against the Beastmen, it's better to go a little bit wide and kind of try and keep it that way, because if you go narrow, that Flock of Doom is just going to punish you, and it looks like that Gorbal kind of skewered a few of his own guys there, but they are working on this Orc War Boss, who they do have surrounded. A lot of the Greenskin infantry, the Crimson Killers, only have 1 model left, and they're definitely shattered. So a lot of the cheapo Beastmen infantry and the Centaurs are kind of running around. You can see the Biggins are just now getting back to that battle. So that just goes to show that if you can kind of lure people out and just take advantage of the 90 move speed on those darn units, it can be really, really good. So the Biggins here are fighting with the Manticores, and this is a good matchup. I mean, Biggins are good against both these units, so obviously very advantageous for my opponent. But at this point, he's just lost so many of his leadership units, and the main core of his army really took a beating here without the support of those Savage Orcs, who, they really just were not, ideal out there kind of wing. And the Flock of Doom cooldown is so low. It's definitely just getting in there and doing some serious work. So these guys are indeed shaken, and the Beastmen still have quite a few units left. Their Gorbals are both in good health, and they also both have potions. At this point, I hadn't used any of them. My opponent does use a Fist of Gork here, but it's a little bit too late, unfortunately, and I think that might be all she wrote. So I'll go ahead and fast forward here, and he does have some Cav running around and some other troops, and the Rusty Airs are coming back, but they're actually, yeah, Rusty Airs, even against lightly armored units, and, you know, just that armor sundering is just so good. Even against Gorbles, who do have 100 armor, it's a big deal. So if you had these guys online shooting at Gorbles and had maybe kept, you know, I liked sending the Biggins out to help in that Cav engagement, but just a bit of an overextension. I think if he had stayed a little bit high and tight, he probably would have had a pretty good chance of winning that game. So very well played to my opponent. It was a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and take a look at the breakdown. So in retrospect, I might have just gone with Ungors in the front line and gone pretty cheap, but these guys held up okay against the Biggins and Black Orcs. They have a little bit, you know, slightly better defensive stats, but I don't know if that justifies it because the shields, you know, I don't feel are terribly pertinent in the Greenskin matchup. So in retrospect, that would probably be something I change. It's just bring Ungor Spear Herds and just kind of go with a cheapo line. You could get quite a few more bodies out there just to take a beating. So that would probably be one change I'd make. But other than that, I was pretty happy with the army composition. As far as my opponent's army goes, I did like it. The Biggins, I don't know about the Black Orcs though, to be honest. Although they did get a ton of kills. But the Biggins are really strong in this matchup. They hit like trucks. And I suppose the Black Orcs are decent against like Gorbles and things like that. So who knows? It's he had a pretty diverse army there. But the Savage Orcs as well as his Cav really took, you know, a really bad engagement. So that was a big part of it. Also, you know, if they had been a little bit more high and tight and maybe the Orc Warboss had gone with the Cav and used Wah and a few other things like that, and the Orc Shaman had also been supporting them, perhaps a Foot of Gork, it might have been a different battle, but again, it's hard to say in retrospect. So really good game to my opponent, Greg the Murloc 60. Look forward to seeing you again on ladder, and hope you guys enjoyed that game. And by the way, guys, I've been getting these thumbnails, and they are so damn good. There are so many. You guys are going to put me out of business. I cannot wait to share them with you guys. So we're going to have a nice little montage on the channel, of course, where you guys can see them. I'll put them up on an Immigrant gallery as well. And also on that same note, there will be kind of a function in which you guys can vote on the winner. So should be a good time. Thanks again, everybody. Have an excellent Sunday afternoon, and take care.